Just going to give it a second while people are entering out of the waiting room. Just going to give it a second while people are entering out of the waiting room. Good morning for some of you. Good afternoon for others. Today's panel is
Good morning
the way
for some
forward.
of you. Good
Post-COVID
afternoon
international
for others.
education. Today's panel is the
This
way
panel
forward.
will focus on the future of
Post-COVID
international education post-COVID.
New
This panel
program
will focus on the
designs and
future of
partnership
international
connectivity
education
models
post-COVID,
likely to continue
new
in the
program
future.
designs and partnership connectivity
Welcome. My name is Rick
models
Legeski,
likely
and I'm
to
a faculty
continue
member
in
in
the
the
future.
Saunders College of Business.
Welcome.
At
My
RIT,
name is Rick Legeski,
and also a
I'm
member of the
faculty
Global
in the
Education
Saunders
Committee of
College
the
of
RIT
Business
Academic Senate,
and also a
It is
member
my
of the
pleasure
Global
to be your
Education
moderator
Committee
today.
of the RIT Academic Senate.
Our conference
It
panels
is
are
my
brought
pleasure
to
to be
you
your
today
moderator
by the efforts
today.
of the RIT Global Office.
Our conference
and the
panels are
RIT
brought to you
Academic
today
Senate.
by the efforts of the
We
RIT
have a unique
Global
set of
Office
perspectives today.
and the
as we
RIT
have the
Academic
presidents from
Senate.
two of our overseas campuses.
We have a unique set of
and a senior
perspectives
leader
today
from one
as
of
we
our
have the
global
presidents
partners.
from two of our overseas campuses.
Our panel speakers
and a
today
senior
are
leader
Jim
from
Myers,
one of our global
Associate
partners.
Provost of International Education.
Our panel
and Global
speakers today
Programs
are Jim Myers,
at Rochester
Associate
Institute of
Provost of
Technology,
International Education
RIT,
and Global Programs,
Don Hudspeth,
at Rochester
Dean and
Institute
President,
of Technology,
RIT,
Croatia,
RIT,
Josef Elsap,
Don Hudspeth,
President,
Dean and
RIT
President,
Dubai,
RIT, Croatia,
Mariela Hernandez
Josef Elsap,
Salazar, President,
Senior
RIT Dubai,
Internationalization Officer,
Mariela
University
Hernandez
del
Salazar,
Senior
Pacifico,
Internationalization
Peru.
Officer, University
Even though we are
del
gathering virtually from around the
Pacifico,
world today,
Peru.
we would like to take a
Even though
moment
we
to
are gathering
respectfully
virtually
acknowledge
from
that
around
the
the world
Rochester
today,
Institute of Technology
we would like to
campus,
take a moment to
located in
respectfully
Rochester, New
acknowledge
York,
that the Rochester
is on the
Institute of
traditional
Technology
territory of the
campus,
Onondaga,
located in Rochester, New
land
York,
guaranteed to them
is on the
by
traditional
the Treaty of
territory of
Canandaigua,
the Onondaga.
1994. Land guaranteed to
They are
them
one of
by
6
the
nations
treaties
that
that
make
make
up
up
the
the
sovereign
sovereign
Haudenosaunee
Haudenosaunee
Confederacy. They are one of 6
We
nations
begin with
that
the
make
land
up the sovereign
acknowledgement as the
Haudenosaunee
opportunity to
Confederacy.
honor the land on which RIT
We
was
begin
built
with the land
and
acknowledgement
recognize the
as the
unique
opportunity
relationship
to honor the
that
land on which
indigenous
RIT
people
was
have
built
with the land and recognize the unique
A couple
relationship that the
housekeeping
indigenous
notes
people
first.
have with the land.
Attendees are
A
requested to
couple
please keep your
housekeeping
microphones
notes
muted
first.
throughout the panelist
Uh,
presentations.
attendees are requested to
You
please
may
keep your camera
microphones
active
muted
throughout the panelist
please
presentations.
be aware
You may
that
keep
we
your
are
camera
recording the
active,
session.
so if you're
but
not comfortable for
please
any
be
reason,
aware
please feel
that
free
we are
to mute
recording
your
the
video.
session. So if you're not comfortable for
I'd like
any
to note
reason,
and thank
please
our
feel
American
free
Sign
to mute
Language
your video.
interpreters today, Cheryl Bovard
I'd like
and
to
Gail
note and
Mansis,
thank our American
joining us
Sign
today
Language
in
interpreters
providing
today,
access
Cheryl
to our deaf and
Bovard
hard of
and Gail
hearing
Mansis.
attendees. Joining us today in providing
Our
access to our
interpreters will
deaf
be
and hard of
spotlighting
hearing
their
attendees.
video on Zoom.
For those not using ASL
Our interpreters will be
interpreting,
spotlighting
we
their
recommend
video on Zoom.
using the gallery
For
view.
those not using
on
ASL
Zoom.
interpreting,
We recommend
we will hold a
using the
Q&A
gallery
session
view
after all
on
panelists
Zoom.
have presented.
Questions
We will
can be
hold a
sent in the
Q&A
Zoom
session
chat
after
during
all
the session,
panelists have
and
presented.
we will compile your
Questions can be
and use
sent
them
in the
during
Zoom
Q&A
chat
session.
during the session, and we will compile your questions.
During the
and
Q&A
use them
session,
during
you'll
the
also
Q&A
have the
session.
opportunity to ask questions live.
During the Q&A
If you'd like
session,
to
you'll
do
also
so,
have the opportunity
please use the
to
hand raising
ask
tool on
questions
Zoom.
live.
If you'd like to
And
do
I
so,
will unmute
please
you
use
and
the
invite you
hand
to
raising
ask a
tool on
question.
Zoom.
And
On
I
behalf
will
of RIT,
unmute
we
you and
appreciate your
invite you
interest
to
and
ask a question.
participation today. This is the
On behalf
first
of
annual
RIT, we
RIT
appreciate your
Global
interest and
Convergence
participation
Conference
today.
meaning
This
we
is the
look forward
first
to
annual
doing this
RIT
and sharing this
Global
dialogue with you in
Convergence
the
Conference.
future. Meaning we look forward to
At the
doing
end,
this
we'll be
and
sending out
sharing
a
this
short
dialogue with you
conference
in the future.
evaluation,
And we appreciate your feedback.
At the end, we'll be sending out a short conference
To start us off
evaluation,
today, I'd like to
and we
invite Dr.
appreciate your
Jim Myers
feedback.
to begin with today's panel. To start
Jim?
us off today, I'd like to invite Dr. Jim Myers to begin with today's panel.
You're muted, Jim.
Sorry. You're muted, Jim. Sorry. There you go.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. For those
There
of
you
you
go.
who are
Good morning,
elsewhere
everyone.
other than
Good
Rochester
afternoon.
or US, for those of you
and,
who are
I want
elsewhere
to
other than
start out
Rochester
really by
or
thanking
in the US,
Rick
and my other colleagues
I
from
want to
RIT
start
who
out
are
really
part
by
of the Global
thanking
Education Committee.
Rick and
My other colleagues
we
from
really
RIT
wouldn't
who were part
have
of the
been able
Global
to do this
Education
without
Committee.
their help and support.
We really wouldn't.
And I also want to
have
thank
been able
my
to do this
terrific
without their help and
colleagues,
support.
Lindsay
McGrath.
And I also want to thank
Mary
my terrific
Polaria
colleagues
Lobos,
who really behind the scenes
Lindsay
made so
McGrath
much of this
and
happen.
Mary Polaria
thank you
Lobos,
all.
who
And of
really
course,
behind the scenes
I'm-
made so
I'm
much
really
of this happen. So
honored and
thank you
flattered
all.
to
And
be
of course,
on this panel with
I'm really
really
honored
good
and
friends,
flattered to be on
Mariella
this panel
Don
with
and Yusuf.
and
I have
really
had an
good
opportunity
friends.
to work together
Mariella
for
and
a
Don
number of years
and
now,
Yusuf.
and we're
And I have had an
in fact,
opportunity
we were
to work
sort of
together
joking
for
before we
a number
started
of
this,
years now, and our
we're-
talks
we're-
today that
in fact, we were sort of
Don
joking
has
before
gotten
we
sick of our
started
jokes
this,
across
our
25
talks
years
today
knowing
that,
each other.
So
Don has
we
gotten sick of
really
our
have
jokes
been
across
friends for a
25
long
years of
time,
knowing
and,
each other. So
I'm grateful for that
we
friendship.
really have been friends
Um,
for a long time. And
I'm
our
grateful for
theme
that
of
friendship.
sort of what's going to
Um,
happen after COVID.
Our theme
Obviously,
of
we're all
sort of what's
speculating,
going to happen
right?
after COVID.
I think we approach
Obviously,
this
we're all
question,
speculating, right?
first of all, with a great deal of hope.
I
I
think
think we
I do.
approach this question.
I think
First of all, with a great deal of hope.
we're all
At least I
hopeful
do.
that
we
I
will
think,
return to some kind of
we're all
normal,
hopeful that
where people will
we
travel
will
again,
return to
where
some
borders
kind
will
of
be
normal,
open,
where
be
people
safe
will
to,
travel again,
visit
where
friends,
borders will be open,
start
where
working
it'll be
together in a
safe
face-to-face
to
way,
visit
with colleagues
friends all over the
start
world.
working together in a
And
face-to-face way
I'm
with
hopeful about
colleagues.
that. I very
all
much
over the
hope
world.
that that is going to
And
be part of
I'm hopeful
of the
about
way
that.
the world works
I
here.
very much
Hopefully
hope
within
that
the
that
next
is going to be part
6 to 9 months
of
to
the way
a
the
year.
world works here. Hopefully within the next
I
6
think
to
our
9 months
our
to a
current
year.
situation, the realities of
I think
COVID
our
over the last
current
year,
situation,
and,
the
however
realities
many months it's
of
been, I guess,
COVID
almost,
over the last year,
I
and
think we're coming up on 14
however
or
many
15 months
months it's
now
been, I
of
guess,
being in
almost.
this situation.
I think we're coming up on 14 or 15 months now.
I think we've
of
learned
being
a
in
ton,
this
and one of the
situation.
conversations last night we
Um,
were having in
I think we've learned a ton, and
one of the conversations last night
what
we were
innovation
having
has
in
come out
the
of
first
out of
panel
this
discussion that we
experience.
had.
And I think
was
that
sort of,
innovation will carry
what
us
innovation has
a
come
long
out of
way,
this experience,
particularly
and
in
I
this
think that
transition
innovation
time
will
as
carry
we
us
sort of wait
a
for
long way,
the new realities
particularly in
of-
this transition
of
time.
COVID
we
as
sort
it
of wait for
sort of
the
becomes more
the new
endemic and
realities
less
of
a pandemic and more of an
COVID
endemic
as it
environment
sort
for
of
us.
becomes more
I
endemic.
think some of those
and less a
innovations will help us
pandemic
get
and more
through
of an
that
endemic
transition.
environment for us.
I think the
I think some of
longer
those
term
innovations
questions
will help us
about
get
what
through
does the
that
future look like
transition.
for international education.
I think the
and
longer
partnering
term
around the
questions
world,
about what does the future look like for
I think a lot of it will
international education and
be
partnering around the
a
world.
lot of what we already do.
I think a
I
lot
think
of
the
it will be,
modalities
and
a
the
lot of
ways
what
in
we
which
already
we do
do
it will be very, very
I
different.
think the modalities,
In other words, we will
and the
continue
ways
to do
in which we do
exchanges
it will
we
be
will
very, very
continue
different.
to have
In other
visiting
words, we will
scholars.
continue to
We
do
will continue
exchanges. We will
to
continue
seek
to
partnerships
have visiting
that
scholars.
enrich
We
both
will
our
continue
student
to
experiences,
seek
our
partnerships
intellectual
that
enterprise, our
enrich
research
both
and
our
creativity
student
work.
experiences.
Our
Those
intellectual
will be very
enterprise,
much
our
part
research
of
and
what we
creativity
do.
work.
And I think we will do them in
Those
somewhat
will be very
traditional
much
ways.
part of what we
will
do.
continue to,
And I think we will do
seek
them in
out the
somewhat
partners
traditional
that,
ways. We will
continue
complement
to
what our
seek out
faculty
the
do.
partners
It will
that,
continue to and should be
faculty
complement
led.
what our faculty do.
The
It will
faculty
continue
should
to and should be
active
faculty
participants
led.
in that.
The faculty
Driving the
should
partnerships,
be active
participants
identifying
in
the
that,
opportunities,
driving the
and then
partnerships,
our administrative
identifying
teams
the
supporting that
opportunities.
work.
And then
I think what will be
our
for me, I
administrative
think what's
teams
exciting to
supporting
think
that
about or to
work.
contemplate. I think what will be
Is
for
to
me,
think
I
about
think
the
what's
ways in which
exciting to
this-
think about
this
or to
new
contemplate
environment
is to think about the ways in which
enrich and maybe
this
minimize
new
the
environment
impact. And this is a little
will
bit of, what we
enrich
spoke
and
about
maybe
last
minimize
night.
the impact.
This is a
Certainly
little bit
one of
of
the
what
of
we
the
spoke
things that
about
we've
last
learned is
night.
that
There's a lot
certainly
that we
one
can
of
do,
one of the things that we've
in
learned
a
is that
remote sort of,
there's a lot that we can do
synchronous
in a
way,
remote sort of
where
where before we would get on a plane or
synchronous
we would drive
way,
someplace and see people.
where before we would get on a
And
plane
that
or we
we
would
did
drive
that
someplace,
at
and
least
see
I think to
people.
some extent without thinking much about
and that
it.
we did that
At
and
least I think to some
I think
extent,
COVID
without
has
thinking
created a
much about
context
it.
for us to really reflect on the extent to
And
which we need
I think
to do
COVID
that.
has created a context
How
for us to
often
really
do we need
reflect
to
on the
travel? How
extent to
often
which
do
we
we
need
need
to
to
get
do
on a
that?
plane.
How
And
often
as a
do we
result
need
of
to
that,
travel?
how often
do we need to
get
emit
on a
as much
plane?
carbon into the
And
atmosphere?
as a result of that, how often
and I
do
think
we
that's
need
a
to
really
emit as
important
much
thing for
carbon
us to
into the
reflect
atmosphere?
on,
Because
we
I
do.
think it has put
And I think that's a
to the
really
front of our
important thing
brain,
for us to reflect on,
because
our
I think
collective
it
brains,
has put
sort of
to the front of our
potential
brain
for us to reduce our
our
impact,
collective brains
through
sort
our
of the
activities.
potential for us to reduce our impact
As we
contemplate
through
a
our
world
activities.
that I think will probably involve
as we
more
contemplate a
remote
world
work that I think will
what
probably
will that
involve
mean for
more
us
remote
as
work,
global and international educators.
What will that mean
In some
for
ways,
us as
you know,
global and international
I hate to
educators?
think about
a
in
place
some
coming
ways,
to RIT as
you
a
know,
place where
I
my
hate to think
colleagues aren't
about a
sort of
place
coming
down
to
the
RIT
hall.
as a
But at
place
the same
where
time, I
my
see the great
colleagues aren't
potential and
sort of
opportunity
down the hall
for
but at the
having
same time, I see the great potential and opportunity
who we might
for
not otherwise
having
be able to get
faculty who work remotely,
faculty,
who we might not otherwise
being
be able to get as
recruit
part of
people and
our
retain
cadre
people who
faculty.
live on the other
being
side of the
able to
planet,
recruit
who can
people and
contribute to
retain people
our
who
campus
live
community on the other side of the planet,
in the
who
same
can
way as somebody
contribute to
who's
our
down the
campus
hall.
community.
But the ways in which
in
they'll
the
do
same
that
way
will
as
just be
somebody
different.
who's down the hall.
So I'm
But
excited
the ways
to
in which they'll
think
do that
about
will just
some
be
of
different.
these.
So I'm excited
of how
to
things will
think
be.
about some of these.
And I think those two
these
things are
new
the things
way
that I'm probably
how
most
things will be.
excited about. Is
And I think
ways in
those
which
two
we will
things
be
are the
able to
things that I'm
reduce our
probably
impact on
most
the
excited
planet.
about. Is
And I think the ways in which we will be able to
engage
on the planet
new
and I think the ways
colleagues
in which
that
we will
we
be
probably
able
wouldn't have
to
been able to
engage
do
had we not had
new
this experience
colleagues
and
that we
realize
probably
that we're
wouldn't have
going
been
to be
able to
working in
do
had we
sort of
not
the
had this
post,
experience and realize that we're going to
in the
be
post-COVID
working in a
environment
that
that
we'll
we
be
post
working more remotely anyway. In
um,
the post-COVID
I
environment,
think
that we'd
the
be working more remotely
in
anyway.
tandem with sort of thinking about that second
I think
point,
I
in
wonder
tandem with sort of
about
thinking about
how
that
much of our
second
back office
point,
work that we do
I
at
wonder
universities
about
will
how much
stay
of our back
at our
office
universities.
work
That we do at universities will
and
stay
this may
at our
be purely an
universities.
administrative concern, but when I think
and-
about
and,
you
this
know
may be
our
purely an
sort of the
administrative
accounting
concern, but
function,
when I think
the
about
kind of legal functions
you know,
that we
our
have, sort of the
in a
accounting
world where
functions,
remote
the
work
kind of
becomes
legal
sort of the
functions
norm,
that we have,
to
in
what
a world
extent
where
do we
remote
need to
work
be very
becomes
place
sort of the
bound around some
norm,
of those kind of activities?
to what
And
extent do we
I
need to
think
be
very
it's
place
interesting
bound
to
around some of
imagine a
those
world
kinds of
where
activities, and
we source the
think
best, for
it's
example,
interesting
in our
to
case,
imagine a world
we
where
source the best tax people
we
that we
source
can
the best,
find,
for
and
example,
they're in
in our
Dubai.
case,
We source
or
the
we
best tax
source
people
the
that we
best
can
accounting
find,
people
and they're in
and
Dubai.
the best
Or
costs,
we source the
and
best
they're in
accounting
Croatia.
people, and
we
the
start
best
to think in
costs,
those in that
and they're in
truly
Croatia.
global way, and less
we start to
bound by
think in
our
those
place for
in
some
that
of
truly
these sort of
global way,
administrative
and
activities
less bound by
that are
our
necessary
place for
in
some
the
of
work that
these
we do.
sort of administrative.
And the last thing
that,
I'll say is
that are
I think,
necessary in the work that we do.
the
And the
conversation
last thing I'll
last
say
night
is
around
I think
equity,
I think is a really
the conversation
critical part
last
of
night
thinking
around
about the
equity,
future.
I think is a really critical part of thinking
the
about
world
the
in,
future.
that is mediated by technology is not one that necessarily brings everyone mediated by technology is not one that necessarily
and I think everyone
brings
who,
everyone on the same playing
we
field.
at RIT through COVID
And I
we had
think
this
everyone
experience
who,
where we knew students didn't have access
at
to
RIT
computers.
through COVID we had this
went out and
experience
actually
where we knew
purchased
students
computers
didn't have access
and
to
gave them
computers
to students who
went
needed
out and
them.
actually
We
purchased
computers
an
and
emergency
gave them
fund that
to
helped
students
students
who
with
needed them.
connectivity
We
issues.
We had
those
an
kinds of
emergency
things.
fund that helps students with
To the extent that we
connectivity
rely on
issues,
technology to
those
deliver
kinds of
education,
things.
I think we have to
To
be
the
really
extent that we
mindful of the
rely on
potential for it
technology
to
to
create
deliver
a
education, I think we
new
have to
kind of
be
digital
really
and
mindful of
educational
the potential
divide.
for it to create a
Yes, it will create
a
more
new
access,
kind of digital and educational
and that's
divide.
a good thing.
Yes,
But
it will
I also
create
think
more
we
access,
really need to think
and
about
that's a good
whether
thing.
that whether it's a
But
trade-off
I also
between
think
access
we really
and
need
quality,
to think about
and are we
whether
just
that
going to have people
whether it's a
who are gonna
trade-off
say, look,
between
you're,
access and
be happy with
quality,
the access,
and are we just going to
it
have
may not
people
be the
who
same
we're going to say, look,
experience
you're
as
people who
be
can
happy
afford
with the access,
all the
it may
technology
not be
and
the
who
same
can come and afford
experience
to
as
be in
people
a
who can afford
residential setting,
all the
be happy
technology
with
and
that.
who can come and afford to
I
be
don't
in
like.
a
I
residential
hope that's
setting,
not the way that this
be happy with
unfolds.
that.
But I do hear
I
a
don't
lot
like.
of
I
conversations
hope that's
about,
not the way that this
about that
unfolds,
particular
but
issue.
I do hear a lot
on
of
both sides of
conversations
that.
about the on one
About
side
that
we're going
particular
to have
issue.
all this new
On
access
both sides of
as a
that,
result
that
of technology
on one side
mediated
we're going to
delivery of
have
international education,
all this new access
connection, as a result of
and
technology
I think
mediated delivery of international education.
on the other side of that,
how
connections,
much will we all still
and I
be able
think,
to sit face to face?
on the other side of that, how much
and
will
connect
we
with
all
each other,
still be
and
able
how
to
much will
sit
that
face to
depend on our
face
socioeconomic status, and connect with each
Um,
other, and how much
So
will
I
that
think
depend on our
for me, I'm
socioeconomic status.
optimistic about the future.
So I think
I'm optimistic.
for me, I'm optimistic
that it will be a
about the
balance
future,
actually between.
I'm
a
optimistic
lot of new sort of
that it will be a balance
technology-mediated
actually
learning,
between
new ways
a lot
of
of
partnering,
new sort of technology
that will help
mediated
us
learning,
minimize our
new
impact,
ways
do
of
new
partnering,
creative things
that will help us minimize
one of the
our
things
impact,
I guess
do
I've
new
gotten
creative old enough now where I feel like one of the things I guess I've gotten old enough things come and go across my life have seen these. I remember the conversation kind of things come and go across my life. A lot of things into the digital environment. I remember the conversation. We were never going to need paper again. A lot of reality of that digital environment. We were never going to need paper we've ever had. And the reality of that is that we now consume as much paper global movement. You know, everybody was kind of globalized, and the reality of that is the global movement. You know, everybody was kind of globalized, and the reality of that is foods movement and the local incredibly connected to our connections to our local institutions. Foods movement and more to us as we become our connections to our local institutions have never meant more to us as we become humanity truly globally. So I just think it's going to be kind of the same humanity going forward. I think I just think really it's going to be kind of the same use technology forward. And I think we're going to find really exciting new ways, really wonderful things. Use technology. But at the same time, I think we will enable us to do some really wonderful things. Seek each other out. At the same time, I think we will for face-to-face connections and partners. Seek each other out as a lot of our traditional ways. For face-to-face connections and partners. So with that, Rick, I'll stop and let a lot of our traditional ways. So with that, Rick, I'll stop.
Fantastic.
Good guess.
Thanks, Jim. I think we'll go to Don Hudspeth, our president and dean in our campuses. I think we'll go to Don Hudspeth, our president and dean in our campuses in Croatia to give us a perspective.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, depending upon where you're connecting from. I do have a brief presentation, so let me just bring it up from the share here. I do have a brief presentation, so let me just bring it up on the share here. Is everyone able to see that?
Perfect.
So good. Is everybody everyone able to see that? As Rick mentioned, my name is Don Hudspeth, and I've been a part of RIT Croatia since its founding back in 1997. Since its founding, those particularly in 1997 audience, you will hear by my those particularly in the American audience, you will hear by my Canadian as well. Process versus process. Vancouver in Canada. I am Canadian as well. Originally from Vancouver in Canada, and I've had the 24 years actually a little later on this month. I'd like to start by giving you a little bit of a background about RIT Croatia. I'd like to start by giving you a little bit of a background about RIT Croatia. We were founded in 1997 in the first private higher educational first campus. We were the first private higher we opened our second campus in Croatia. We opened our second campus in the capital between our two campuses, we have a total of 874 students. Between our two campuses, enrolled in our programs, approximately 74 students from Croatia, enrolled in our programs, approximately 70% international students from Croatia, and the other 30 countries and from all over the world, immediate surrounding fairly high percentage and from all over the world, and fairly high percentage who come from our undergraduate degree programs in hospitality and tourism management. Our undergraduate degree programs in hospitality and tourism management, international business, completing the program, receive a fully accredited from Rochester Institute of Technology, as well they receive a fully accredited Croatian diploma, as well they receive a fully accredited Croatian diploma, which is Bologna Declaration. So they receive the two in Europe under the Bologna Declaration. So they receive. We also deliver with completing the master's degree program. We also deliver U.S. accreditation within master's degree programs that have strictly U.S. accreditation within service leadership. And since beginning in 1997, we've now had over 2,500. And since beginning in 1997, completing over 2,500 contribute to a very solid alumni base. Have coming up in another 2 weeks, we'll have another 180 joining that. Coming up in another 2 weeks, we'll have another 180 joining that. To talk a little bit about our international education goals, to talk a little bit about very our international education institutions. I think ours are very similar to a lot of RIT institutions in Rochester and the other global campuses. Happening with RIT, really we have the goal that for our students in particular, to have an understanding of sort of all for our students complexities and to have an understanding of sort of all the world complexities and also really to help them develop cultural sensitivity and also really to help them develop values, cultural sensitivity, attitudes, and knowledge, really understanding the values required to function and deal with knowledge, skill set operating that's really required to function and deal with operating specifically. And we look at accomplishing those goals through specifically study abroad. We look at accomplishing those goals understandably with having study abroad, which a big push of ours campuses within having part of our IT and all of our other IT network campuses within being part of our IT network of campuses, part of being part of European Plus program. We also have a lot of EU-based Erasmus Plus program. We also have a lot of international experiential learning as another we look at way of international experiential learning project, another way of accomplishing internships for our students, work projects, also through global campuses and projects for our students in the past, also classes that have actually been projects we've had students in the past, classes that have actually been Rochester campus, where the students have participated in projects, in particularly in Rochester campus as well as in the Dubai campus. We also look at to have that connectivity, to have more and more of our we also look at to have that connectivity, to have more and more of our students when they complete their undergraduate to actually complete graduate program. Another one of our goals is well tied into international education. Another one of our goals is well tied into international education is certainly through and that by increasing the number of international student body and that by increasing the number of international programs in our campuses. Attending, we do have a goal to move that to 50% of our overall. We do have a goal to move that to 50% of our overall enrollment, educational experience, and ties students into our international educational experience. From a faculty and staff perspective, we have from a faculty and staff perspective to have as many course exchange programs as possible, where faculty members are actually course exchange physically exchanging, where faculty members are actually at either campus physically exchanging, spending 2 weeks at either campus to the same course being delivered and have following a similar curriculum, the same course being delivered and have following a similar curriculum. Faculty members will actually exchange for campuses and the Rochester campus. We're also looking at increased research collaboration. We're also looking at our IT campuses plus research collaboration with our IT campuses plus also through our we also see within our international education goals. We also see within our international education goals about not only about increasing the diversity of our as well of our international staff is also an important component of this, and we have had staff is also an exchange programs where we have had staff today in exchange programs where we have had our Rochester campus going and spending time with our Erasmus partners. Rochester campus plus to talk a little bit about adapting to COVID when like the rest of the world. To talk a little bit about adapting to COVID kind of like the rest of the world. I don't say so much a halt, but kind of pause, but came to I don't say so much where a lot of us kind of went into survival mode, and where a lot of us kind of went into survival mode. Turn out not really sure what was actually how things were going to deliver the classes. Turn out from found out actually being able to deliver the classes. We actually adapted very quickly. I think and being able to move to 100%. We actually adapted very quickly and being able to move to 100% blended model. But I think it was very much of at that time initially. But I think it was very much putting the pause button on things at that time initially. People just putting the pause international opportunities, not really exploring a lot because of these international opportunities. Sure what was going to be happening because particularly we really like say worrying about some of the financial consequences and particularly what this will be. Like will we be about viable financial consequences forward? What this will be? Will we be viable institutions? But since we moved from that, and even as much as but since we moved from that, and even as much as what they say with the I think overall we started started to going relatively quickly out of that and sort of like, okay, here are our relatively quickly out of that and sort of like, okay, here are our constraints. We do have some limitations, particularly physically travel point of view, being able students and our faculty and staff traveling abroad. Physically, what can we do our students and our faculty I think that we're traveling abroad, what can we do in that regard? And what I found from a challenging point of view is that in some cases, some of our partners, what I found from a challenging point of view is that in some cases, some of our partners, other partners in some of Erasmus Plus family, they've withstayed other partners in some of Erasmus for a multitude of reasons. A lot of them stayed in their own survival mode, and for a multitude of what's been happening within their country, because they've really been at the whims of what's been happening within their country with COVID, and also as we know, it's how they've been dealing. It's not like we've had consistent and also as we know, it's occurring all at the same we've had time waves across the globe occurring. But what we found in terms of working with our partners, it's really come down but to what we kind of in terms of working with our partners, virtual mindset assessment about kind of where are kind of a virtual mindset. Are they moving ahead? Are they looking at ways to adapt? Are they moving ahead? Are they looking at ways to adapt virtually and not being 100% being able to accomplish some of these goals virtually? And I think really ultimately that's going to determine the success of some of our relationships. And I think really ultimately that's how far they are in this what I call virtual mindset that is not only how far they are backed by what I call virtual mindset technology capabilities, but also sort of where is the mindset of the institute technology capabilities, but also sort of where is the mindset of the institute in terms of being able to adapt to these. When I look at us going forward, I think we're going to have very same or similar. When I look at us going forward, I think we're going to have very same in the post-similar international education goals. But the one thing is really kind of in the virtual component COVID environment is here. But the one thing is really this virtual component of what we're doing. And like as I mentioned just it will be the previous slide, I think. And like as I mentioned just our international partners, previous slide, I think where are they and what is their overall approach to where are they and what is their overall approach. The other thing is I really see the virtual presence will be. The other thing is I really see the virtual presence international goals will help us a lot in terms of the attainment of international Jim had mentioned goals are now being able to engage faculty as from all over now being able to engage faculty going to help us from all over the world and our overall collaboration. Maybe there would be folks that otherwise we wouldn't even have the opportunity collaboration to. Maybe there would be folks that otherwise we wouldn't even have the opportunity to travel to. Even from maybe from a budget point of view, this and facilitate this collaboration. To access. I think the real challenge is going to be what is the right blend. I think the real challenge is going to be in-person, what online right blend of this ultimately achieving the goals, online key things being flexible, ultimately and being agile, the goals, but a key thing adapt relatively quickly. And I think that will be a challenge for us in academia relatively quickly. At times, and I think that will be a challenge for us in academia because at times a lot of different reasons. And I think now that's going to be a bigger part. A lot of different reasons. And I think now that's being able to be a bigger part those ultimately quicker and adapting is being able to make those changes quicker and adapting what is going to be this blend ultimately, like I say, kind of figuring out. So that's parts that I wanted to share, and I certainly look forward to welcoming some of your questions. So that's parts that I wanted to share, and I certainly look forward to welcoming some of your questions a little later on in the panel.
Fantastic. Next, we're going. Thanks. Next, we're going to have our president of our campus in Dubai. Next, we're going to have Dr. Yosef, our president of our campus in Dubai. Dr. Yosef, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, we welcome you today.
Perfectly.
Yes, thank you, Rick. It's a pleasure actually to meet all my colleagues here. Yes, thank you, Rick. I didn't prepare any presentation, so all my colleagues here cite what I'm going to say. I didn't prepare any give an idea about RIT just we were started in 2008 We have some idea about Dubai Silicon Oasis, which they wanted to become the Silicon Valley. We have something in Dubai called Dubai Silicon Oasis, which they wanted to become. So we decided at that moment we need a university international, which is good in that area that help us. We need a university international. We ended up good in that area that help us in order to achieve this. And we ended up with RIT, and RIT was so generous in creating that industry. We are grateful to them who accepted to join us. Of course, RIT, they had this vision that their students, they will be exposed. Of course, RIT, they had this vision that their students, they will be exposed. Our students coming from arena by exchanging their students. At the same time, taking advantage of a very dynamic city, which is Dubai. At the same time, taking advantage of Rochester, a very dynamic city, which is Dubai, and maybe that will allow faculty in Rochester. We have programs in engineering. We have in computing, we have as well. We have business programs in engineering. In the master programs, we have engineering and business, networking, and in the master programs, we have engineering which are actually done for Dubai, but were approved by Rochester. But we created one of them as programs which are actually done for Dubai. But the idea was to help the government here in order to make Dubai even more smart. The idea was to help the government here programs to make Dubai even more data to diversify the economy. And other programs, data analytics, they wanted data to diversify the economy, but they didn't have any champions of data. So they came to us and said, look, we created actually the data analytics with the support of our colleagues from Rochester. And we created actually the data analytics with we graduated up to now 75 students, which are very influential. We graduated up to now 75 in the future soon, which are very influential master degree with the help of our colleagues from Rochester. In the future soon, we will start a new master degree with the help of our colleagues from Rochester. You'll be surprised. UE, they have their own 2071 vision. Surprised. UE, they have their own strategy. The idea is how do we get from here vision already 2071 and the strategy. The way to do it is we how do we get from here we create the 2071 design the future. The way to do it is we foresee the future and we create the future through this program. And with the help of our colleagues RIT Dubai was taking this assignment through this program. We are so excited. And with the help of our colleagues from Rochester, our students, they come from 70 nationalities. We are so excited. We are almost now our students, they come from 70 nationalities. 70% are we are almost now almost 1,000 students. But our objective is really 70% are males, 50% are local students. But our objective is really to have students 50% either they are Emiratis. When I say local students, their parents are living in Emirates. Either they are Emiratis, or while we need 50% parents are living in Emirates. So they are living in UAE. While we need 50% of the students, so that goal reaching 50-50 was really affected by COVID-19. So that goal, reaching 50-50, was really affected by COVID-19, and we need to change our strategies. If you ask most of our students, why did you select RIT? If you ask most of our students, say many of them, they say, did you select RIT American university? I will end up with an American degree, they said, because it's an American to go university, I will end up with an American degree, and I have the opportunity to not having this international goal, maybe transfer and make it be affected by not having this international goal to do a good job. And make it, we have really to be affected by COVID-19 to make sure we still do a good job. Give the aspirations to those students that you can, in order to make sure with an American degree, give the aspirations to those students that you can goes away, finish with an American degree, and after COVID-19 goes away. Even before COVID-19, Industry 4, they started showing that what we even before COVID-19, Industry 4, they started showing that really what we are giving you graduation, not only degrees, but in the whole they end up with no job. Is really not the future. You graduate education degrees at the expense of having with no job a future. Or maybe expensive education, but at the expense of having before COVID-19. How do we really change the idea of design the university of the future before COVID-19? Such that we teach do we really change in a different way, design the university of the future. Especially the gap between industry and the university was getting wider and wider. Especially the gap between industry and the university was getting wider as an industry. And if we don't do anything, we will end up to the future. As an industry, COVID-19 came and pushed all of us to do something to the future. And as Don mentioned, at the beginning, we were just trying to see all of us to do something. What can we do? And as Don mentioned, at the beginning, later on, we trying to see after calming down, we discovered online education. But later on, we after calming down, definitely is not the way. Online education, it could really complement the education, not the way we give to students. It could really complement having it all. The education is what we give to students, because students they have to having university as online is mingle with industry, because students they have each other. Students they should have their own experiences with industry, deal with other people and so on. And they should have their own experiences of how to deal with. So I think in the future we have to, and online cannot the elements were online. So I think in the future we have better education, better pedagogy. Elements were online really complement the better education, better pedagogy. But however, there was an advantage. Our Ministry of Education approving our program, they were reluctant. However, there was an advantage. Our Ministry of Education approving our program, they were reluctant to having anything. They started saying, "Oh yes, there are certain because of COVID-19 online education." They started saying, "Why don't we really relax it a little bit and allow those universities in order to have more? Why don't we really relax it a little bit as they can justify the benefit in order to have more?" And that really will increase as long as they can justify the benefit. Will allow our students to take more courses as I think main campus and other campuses. Will allow our students to take more courses because the ministry was main campus and other campuses, which we didn't before we were pushing our faculty to do research with our main campus. Before we were pushing our faculty to do research with our PhD main campus colleagues, and we are located in Dubai. Even we started having PhD students. They are doing their PhDs. They are located in Dubai, but in RIT sometimes with a little bit of PhDs. Now with COVID-19, that paused everything. Sometimes with a little bit, they managed to continue. With COVID-19, that especially it was at the early stage students, they managed to continue doing their work. I think as we move to the future, it was at the early stage continue. PhD online will become part of it. I think as we move to the visitations, both sides continue. Online will become part of it, but definitely visitations. In order to give students the more opportunities to mingle with other students, in order to give students the more opportunities to mingle with other students in the main campus, really made we created competitions, integrate and interact. And the competition really made students better than what we used to integrate and interact with each other. Sometimes even I don't have an alternative. This is the only way I can COVID-19. Suddenly they start discovering I don't have an alternative. This is the only way I can by doing it online. They start discovering there are opportunities. We discovered actually from COVID-19, we need as well to diversify our relations. We discovered actually from COVID-19, we need as well to diversify our relation. New York will be our main campus. We give their degree, but it doesn't mean that RIT New York will be our main campus. We give their degree, but it doesn't other partners if we really integrate, especially in the innovation arena. But even other connecting our main campus in the US, RIT Dubai even connecting our main campus to integrate universities. RIT Dubai will in the region. The states together in the innovation integrate universities, and I think this will be something in the future stays together in the innovation arena. The other thing which we discovered in the future we need to emphasize. We have been talking with our partners in other campuses, like in China. We have been talking with our partners in other campuses, like in China. Actually, COVID-19 they showed work together. Actually, this is going to be now we didn't do much exercise. Actually, COVID-19 they showed each. Actually, this is going to be we can do things faster. The time zone is a little bit because we can do things faster. The time maybe COVID-19 is a little bit tell us that in the future you have to collaborate. So maybe COVID-19 in addition to the main campus. Not only that in the future you have to collaborate with other universities in your country. Not only that you have in order really to collaborate with other universities in your country. In order really to help the students and the community. Maybe some of you know that we designed our new campus, and we were maybe some of you know that we designed our new campus, and we were starting building it. But COVID-19 came and there was a question. Do we continue now with our WISE board? What will happen to the education sector? As we decided, we are with our WISE board and WISE colleagues from Rochester. We decided actually a month ago we moved to the new campus. I changed my actually a month ago. The screen we have. I think what you see this is our campus. I changed my. If you come and see it, it is exactly the same. I think what you see this is our campus ready. If you come and see it, it is exactly the same thing. Except the trees are not ready. But you know, when we say it will be ready. What COVID-19 told us about the new campus, when we discovered that we what COVID-19 told us about the new classical sense, we discovered that we cannot really just only build a university in the classical sense where students they go and take education. The campus will be just only one element out of the ecosystem where you have industries within the campus will be just only one element out of the ecosystem where you have industries within the campus and students they have innovation within the campus. The concept of smart campus has to be smart and students campus has to be sustainable. The concept of smart solutions they go into a complete campus has to be sustainable. Beyond suddenly students they go from university, complete they have a proper integration. Beyond just that's why we had 4 themes from the new campus. They have smart campus, sustainable campus, and that's why we had 4 themes from the new campus. Smart campus, and I think this is going to be the future of any university. Don't build the university outside. And I think this is going to be the future of any university. Don't build the university outside. Bring them your communities. a few elements I would like to finish or bring them. As you know, as we move into the future, a few elements I would like to finish technologies, students, as you know, as we don't have the future with the industry for technology, we will not have a future. We don't have jobs for life. So a student coming out saying, look, I'm an engineer, will not have a profession, or I am a business. So a student coming out saying, look, I'm an engineer, is not valid anymore. Profession for I am a business. You should really diversify your knowledge in order to be adapted. Profession for life, and you should cannot only reinvent ideas and solutions. You cannot only reinvent ideas and solutions. You have to really make it necessary that psychology, because industrial psychology becomes really make it necessary that psychology students to have industrial psychology in the future to reinvent how do we really help students to have the stamina in the future. I think as universities we should themselves RIT campus should come together and really focus on universities how do we RIT position in psychology as an education as training in order to position in psychology as an education. I would like to finish, in order to make our students a point which Jim mentioned. I would like to finish, if you allow me, presentation. A point which Jim mentioned. Because of Industry 4, you will find the job market will change. Let me give you an example. Because of Industry 4, you will find the job market in Europe they are using many workers. The US, for Sri Lanka, they are using many work clothing or different kinds workers, let's say, products and they use to produce. Let's assume, for example, different kind. The guy in Manhattan products in New York says, I am using 3D printing. I don't need those. The guy in Manhattan in New York says, suddenly you will end up with another country having so many people, they are not trained for anything. Suddenly you will end up with another country having so many people, and you are happy you managed to solve your problem. And if even if as a country you are safe and you are happy you managed to solve your problem or other, but you did not help your neighbors, your region, local definitely it will other countries at the end of outside. So as universities, we have to be thought leaders. How do we really sustain? So as universities, we have to be thought leaders. How do we really sustain safety and prosperity of the whole world, not just only our own safety and the prosperity of the whole world, not just only our own universities and RIT being a global university. This is really hold it and become a thought leader. This is the way we are helping the world should really hold even with and become a thought leader. This is the way we are helping the world to come together, even with the push of the technology in the future.
And our last panels today, which will give us a perspective from one of our last panels today, which will give us a perspective from one of our
share a little bit about the
great partner universities.
with her university in
Mariala to share a little bit about the experience with her university in Peru.
Thank you, Rick, for the presentation. I don't know if you can see for the presentation.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, thanks for the invitation.
Perfect.
Mariela Hernandez from thanks for the invitation. I want to Mariela Hernandez idea where we are. Peru. Peru is in the idea where we are. Peru. We are our campus is in Lima, that is the capital. Lima is the only capital in all Latin America. Lima, that is the capital. So that makes us Lima is the only capital in all Latin America. Other Latin America. So that makes us a little bit our population is other Latin American people, and from those 12 our population is 32 million people, and from those 12 Universal Pacific is a private non-for-profit institution established in 1962. Universal Pacific is a private non-for-profit entrepreneurs with the support established in 1962 by a group of Peruvian entrepreneurs specialized in management, Society of and we are the most prestigious institution in the country. We are specialized in management and one of the leading ones. And we are the most prestigious institution in the country. We have over 4,500 undergraduates in Latin America and over 1,500 undergraduates. We offer 9 undergraduate and over 1,500 graduate. And we have to offer 9 undergraduate degrees and 11 master's degrees. And we have to our relationship with RIT started well. We signed our agreement. Our relationship with RIT, but I know that it started well. We signed our agreement in 2018. We won but I know that it started 100,000 strong in the American Innovation Fund. We won the RIC 100,000 strong in the American Innovation Fund project, and the project has a lot of exchange of practices work food and beverage project. And the project we are currently working of practices in the food and beverage with our school of and we are currently working with James in a one of the things that we have been done in international partnership development that now the things that we have been done in international partnership development that now is that are coming we optimize our situation website to be mobile friendly for example, and we offer in Spanish website to be mobile because in comparison with other institutions and we offer in Spanish we offer more than 50 because in comparison with other institutions in Peru, we offer more than 50 classes taught fully in English for our international students that want to come here in the country at least. So this is what we got an active presence social networks such as Facebook and Instagram. We got an active presence social networks such as Facebook. We did a systematization of our application process for our students that want to go abroad. Systematization so in that way, for example, we can put all our students that want to go abroad. So in that way, for example, usually we were carrying around brochures when we went to conferences. Now we have videos. Usually we were carrying around brochures when we went to conferences. Now we have videos and all the information. And we work in an online registration process for incoming students because we work in an online registration process for incoming students because until some years ago, so we work all of these to be present without knowing that COVID is coming. So we work all of these without knowing that COVID is coming. So that to make us face the other thing that we did in regards to innovation the other thing that we did in regards to innovation, we didn't have that before. In a way that it works faculty-led program is we didn't have that before. 2 weeks, and in a way that it works of classes with a professor here on campus, 2 weeks, and then you travel with the professor of classes with a professor, and then you have here on campus, and then you travel with the professor abroad on the phone. And then you have experience. This is something that sadly because of COVID has been stopped. And I'm going to talk and this is something that sadly because of COVID has been adopt a mascot. And I'm going to you can see is a llama. So everywhere I travel, we adopt a mascot around the llama. And you can see is a llama. So everywhere I travel, I bring around the llama and I take pictures of the llama in the different campuses that I visit. And then we post our students to know the possibilities to our social networks to engage. We established teaching mobility. Our students to know the possibilities to abroad. There was a week that we established teaching mobility, which we invite professors from abroad to come to our campus to teach to our students. So this is a way we invite professors from abroad to come to our campus to teach to our students. So this is a way to do some internationalization at home. We had a student mobility fund for students coming from low-income families. We had a student mobility fund for students coming from low-income families because we noticed that sometimes restrict a lot if you are not. The possibilities of having international experience. So we established you are not, and the only resources to do so. So we established this, and that you can go anywhere in the world except Europe. And why is that? It's because our exchange you can go anywhere in the world 90% concentrated back and forth to our exchange. So we want the students to consider other concentrated back and forth to Europe. The US, so we want Canada, Latin America, Asia, and so far it's the US, Canada, Latin America, Asia. And so far, and of course, the application to Erasmus funds and the 100,000. And of course, the application. And then, of course, came COVID. As you can see, we used to travel. Now the campus is closed. And then, of course, came COVID. As you can see, we used to travel. Now the campus is closed. Here in Peru, all the campuses from schools, high school, all the universities, everything is closed. Here is not high school, face-to-face and universities, everything is closed. Here is the vaccination process face-to-face is really slow. It's not permitted. So they just started yesterday. It's really slow. Older than 70 years old. Just started yesterday. There's a long way to go. People older than 70 years old. Our plan there's a long way to open the campus in August, but our plan is that might not open the campus. So all the classes that we're offering at the moment are that might not be virtual platform. So all the classes that we're offering at the moment are in a virtual platform. Last year we used Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. This year we are starting stable Microsoft Teams here because it has some of the connections more students have stable. So here we have to do some adjustments. For example, we used to have this fair that was called. We have to do some adjustments. For example, all of our international students fair that was called International Day institution, in which all of our international students have some are considered those to go abroad. Institutions. Now we have for our Pacific students are considered those that go fully virtual. Now we develop an international website day that have like virtual. So we develop click on them and you can website and you can have like videos that our parents you can send to us them and also videos from students, videos that our parents send to us and also videos from students. This year we want to be a little more ambitious and we want to do some live events. This year we want to be a little more ambitious and we want to do some live Q&As with the such as with the students. So the partner can come directly and do Q&As with the and of course the major adjustment we are in the process of organizing that. since and of course the major adjustment that we did is the global mobility is still restricted here. We used to have, as I said before, the International Week in person. Now we have it in a virtual mode. As I said before, the International Week in person. Now we have it in a virtual mode in terms of the student engagement. At the beginning, we were like, maybe they are not going to be that interested, but at the beginning, we were like, maybe they are not going to be that interested. We almost double up the number of students enrolled. Happily, I mean, we compare, we almost double up the number of students enrolled. And of course, we have also professors that are more willing to participate because yes, time and distance makes sometimes professors that are more willing to participate more complicated. But now that it's virtual, makes sometimes everything is easier for them, more complicated. But now that it's virtual, and of course now the Llama. We still promote some of the destinations, and of course now the Llama have a lot of restrictions here. We are promoting some of the destinations, but since we have a lot of restrictions here, we are promoting one is not working or didn't work. In our case specifically, virtual one is not working or didn't work. In our case, we receive students that are having classes here at Pacifico because our students don't want to go having classes here at a virtual exchange. But our students don't want to go. What they are doing is they apply for virtual exchange, for example. So and then when the partner institution said, you know, the classes are going to be virtual, and then when the partner institution said, you know, the classes are going to be delaying the exchange, they cancel. So what they are doing is delaying they can go and have an in-presence the exchange period. So until they can go in that way, I mean, we are still receiving virtual students, but in that way, I mean, we are still receiving virtual students, but everything we can. But it's not working. And the other thing that from international relations we can, but it's not working. And the other thing that from is the international relations as a network is not working. And I'm talking especially is the virtual conference as a network. You know, this big event. And I'm talking especially every year. For example, NAPSA. You know, this big event that with my current partners. I don't need NAPSA. To have meetings with my current partners, I don't need NAPSA. It's not working. If I want to talk to so this is something that for us. James, I don't need NAPSA. I will. I want to talk to James. I'm organizing a meeting directly with James. So I don't need NAPSA. One of the things that send an email to James. I'm organizing a meeting directly. So and moving forward, one of the things that for us is not working quite already. And moving forward, well, a lot of things, already, but some of the things that I want to and Joseph has complement a lot of things, internationalization that I want to is not going to disappear. Complement the idea that internationalization is what people at least here in Peru think that now with COVID, contrary, you know, your what people at least here in Peru think that now with COVID, you know, on the contrary, there's still more students interested in having an international experience. On the contrary, for us as Pacifico is also interested in having an international experience. For us really, it opened an opportunity because what we used to happen before COVID is that it opened an opportunity decided to go abroad. What we used to happen before COVID is that now they are considering decided to go abroad some years and then go abroad. Now they are considering stay here the second point. And then what we are focusing at the moment as an institution that comes to develop double degrees. What we are focusing at the moment as an institution is to develop the best of two worlds, because this is a way to offer the best. So we are prioritizing in what makes us current students, and we are prioritizing in what makes us. The other thing that in our case is that the double degree. The other thing during that period is the possibility to take advantage of the opportunities of learning and collaborative research. Possibility to take advantage of the opportunities of learning and collaborative research. Research was something that, but now we are trying to collaborate more in that sense. That closely. But now we are trying to collaborate more. I think it's not about volume but quality. In regards of partnerships, especially, I think it's not about volume but quality. Fewer partnerships. And I truly think personal relationships are going to make partnerships sustainable. I think that personal relationships, close relationships that I have sustainable. I think I wouldn't have this close relationship that I have with RIT before that we work project that I visit their campus, they visit our campus. You know, this close relationship project that I visit their campus, they visit our campus. And this is something that close relationship will need to continue to rely on. It's a personal one. So I think strong partnerships will survive. We will need to continue to rely on to COVID. So I think strong partnerships will survive. Might be a little bit trickier to COVID. And finally, I totally agree might be a little bit blended model will prevail. And finally, I totally agree with you said the virtual blended model classrooms are not. It's not a way to go. The virtual some students classrooms are not now showing a way to go. At least signs. Some students are mental now showing health problems because signs of isolated because mental home all day mental health problems classes. So they need to have isolated because of being at home all day and need to find a way. So they need to have the best of the. So I think we to have some part in virtual and some part to have the best of the both worlds. To have some part in virtual and some part. And then if you want to follow on Universidad del Pacífico, you can follow in our Facebook. And then if you want to follow on Universidad del Pacífico, you can follow in our Facebook, our Instagram.
Thank you, Marielle. That was fantastic. I really appreciate that. That did a nice job of. Thank you, Marielle. That was bringing fantastic. I really appreciate that. That did a nice job of. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize some of the things we talked about. But at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and if you do summarize some of the things we talked about, the panelists. But at this point, please go ahead and recommend if you do have questions for the panelists to please go ahead and post those in the chat. So just a couple things to come to mind. A few seconds here regarding sort of COVID. So just and the way a couple things to come to mind. I get the sense regarding sort of COVID from what I've been hearing forward broadly. I get the sense industry from what I've been hearing. The panel today is it broadly it really education and industry and then the panel today is it it really sped up Joseph's comments about the government. So maybe stance against online. Joseph's comments about the government delivery maybe and then realizing against that, online. COVID delivery sort of forced that realizing that in order to survive these initial COVID was going to sort of force that hand in order to jumping into survive these initial delivery impacts really sped up that change jumping into online delivery. I'm also hearing that it's really sped up that providing potential opportunities. I'm also hearing that it's providing for the future, I think potential opportunities, some fantastic points about for the future, access Jim brought up expertise and resources points about, and Don talked about that also, that expertise and resources member, and Don talked about that also, that to bring on a faculty member that maybe can't economical and live in Croatia still have that individual be a part of the faculty and bring expertise still have that individual be a part of the opportunities are really bring expertise to the classroom, a positive outcome. So it seems like opportunities are really I think a consistent message that probably being forced to go 100%. I think a consistent message like that we did probably being forced to go 100% first hit online for many of our like we branch did campuses and back when the pandemic first hit. I think it's the case in many of our branch campuses, and we realize that this currently I still think it's the case in Peru. Be all in terms of the technology aspects that it has to complement. This can't be the end all be all in terms of the technology aspect that it has to complement what we do in the classroom. An interesting part that I hadn't really given as much thought to that. An interesting part that I hadn't really given as much thought to that bringing to the forefront our panelists did a nice job of collaborations, bringing to the forefront means the idea of collaborations and collaborations. It's very interesting the idea and what this means for collaborations and Don, as you I thought it was very interesting the idea of other virtual mindset or. So as you look past partners, you realize that other universities, there needs to be a match at that virtual mindset level. You realize that there needs to be a match. We don't know for sure virtual mindset level what the pandemic's going to mean for the future. Obviously, we don't know for sure in terms of when things will be 100%. What the pandemic's going to mean for the future. In terms of when things will be 100%. What I'm hearing is that quote unquote normal, this digital, but I think delivery model and this complement digital in-person classes is probably going to stay in some form. Complement our in-person classes is probably going to stay in some form to be on board with that. So that we need our partners to be on board. I thought Mariella again related to that concept of collaboration. I thought Mariella again related to that concept of collaboration, stronger partnerships, the idea of because we may have to go through difficult and challenging times with our partners. We may have to go through difficult and challenging times with our partners. Maybe the partnership before was really just part of the partnership, exchange, and maybe the partnership before technical was issues and exchange and maybe homesickness with technical issues and very technical things versus homesickness with students and just challenges that COVID provides versus partnerships going through some strong enough to challenges that COVID provides. Partnerships need to be strong enough in the future last its support. So some fantastic things in the future. Fantastic points fantastic. I really appreciate the time that you've all given us and fantastic points made today. I really appreciate the time that you've all given us. I'll start with a question as I monitor the chat questions. I'll start with a question, Jim. I thought I monitor kicked it off with questions. Jim, I thought you a really interesting point around with this access to new resources, really interesting new talent, new expertise. This whether it be access to new resources, new talent, new expertise. Obviously, whether it be in the classroom, back office, people, or obviously in the classroom, bringing people. Into what do you think about the experiences that we've had so far? That maybe what do you think about makes that more that we've had so far viable, more attractive today? Makes that more pre-COVID viable, we had more attractive the ability today to somewhat do that in the past with obviously online learning, to the ability to somewhat do that in the past with. But how do you see sort of maybe what's going on now, jumpstarting that as having? But how do you see sort of maybe what's going on now, jumpstarting that as having greater potential?
Thanks, Rick. I think at least in the RIT experience, thanks, Rick. I think at least in the RIT experience, I think we haven't had a deep cross-university conversation. We haven't had a deep cross-university conversation about remote work. And I would say we're having a very until now honest conversation. And I would say we're having a very remotely honest conversation about who can do it, what are the equity issues, what are the at RIT, what are who can do the barriers, what are the equity issues, and those kinds of things. And it was accelerated only. What are the barriers? We've had areas within those kinds of things, and it was accelerated only this kind of thing. At least experimenting. We've had areas within the university. I think we were thrown into doing this kind of thing. At least experimenting with it. I think we were thrown into that. Hey, you know what? As a result of the pandemic, things can go on, and you can do these. Allowed us to sort of see that. Hey, you know what? Remotely, things can go on, and you can do these, and everybody's sort of gotten used to this environment, right? In a way that, and everybody's sort of gotten used to this environment. I'm not in a way that convinced that I'm not sure it's an optimal this kind of conference is necessarily I'm not better. Convinced that this kind of conference we all get is necessarily better. But I will tell you than a conference. I've been to a lot of conferences together where there's a lot fewer than 40 people. I've been to a lot of conferences in a room where there's a lot fewer than discussion, and they all flew in from someplace in a room having this kind of discussion. To have 40 people or thereabouts on in this conference setting, to have 40 people or thereabouts on has allowed people from literally all over the world to come together at virtually little or no cost. It has allowed people from literally all over the world to come together at virtually little or no cost to them. That's what I'm saying between those two examples. So I think in the world of work, I guess what I'm saying between those, we really now understand the opportunity. One, I think in the world of work, I think in the really now of academic opportunity that exists with remote work. I think in the world of academic life and sharing ideas, we're going to be able to do that quicker, more readily, sharing ideas. And we're going to be able to do that quicker. I'm not sure it's going to completely supplant in ways that we hadn't imagined before. And I'm not sure it's going to completely supplant and replace our traditional ways. And I think that's also the way it's going to be with work. I think it's going to enhance the way that. And I think that's also it's not going to replace the fact that I still want to enhance the way that we work. Jude and I replace the fact that I still know each other in a way. But we've never actually gotten a chance. I don't know each other in a way. And yet we've never actually got a chance, I don't think, to sit in the same room on and thinks about. And yet I am just captivated by the kinds of things that he works on. That wouldn't have happened, and quite honestly, without some of the virtually that wouldn't have happened. Ways in which, quite honestly, without some of the so I just get really excited about thinking about those opportunities as enhancements. So I just get really excited about thinking about those opportunities and in the ways enhancements to what we traditionally do.
No, fantastic. No, I 100% agree. I mean, I think of just from a fantastic perspective of teaching. Agree. I mean, I think of just the access to executive perspective of being able to bring into the classroom, the access to we would have never been able to fly into the classroom and bring to campus that we would have never been able to fly in time and bring to campus. I'm definitely not seeing it as something that limited time replaces, but as I'm definitely not seeing it as something that provides a resource replaces the classroom into the campuses around the world, provides a resource to the classroom into the campuses. There's a question in the chat that was definitely touched upon. There's a question in the chat last night. It says definitely touched upon the issue around community last night. whether it be local or global students, the issue around community relying on their peers, local or global students today need to be part of a community relying on their peers to help them. I guess thinking about what we know students are going through now, thinking about been the easiest as we've what we know students are going through now, relying heavily on the easiest as we let's call it an pivoted to model, relying heavily on a blended. Let's call it how do our panelists model see maybe in the future what we've learned from how do our panelists doing now during COVID maybe in the future what we might allow us to maybe better doing now during COVID students or make them feel might allow us to maybe part better support students or make one of the things that comes to mind Yosef part of a community making some comments was and you one of the things that comes to mind Yosef competitions and comments with students in groups you mentioned something about maybe the current competitions and putting students in groups made that how maybe the current practice experience for students has made that a I don't know if you want to comment further on that and how it's led to maybe for students a sense of community among the further on that and how it's led to maybe more a sense of community among the students or not.
Thank you.
Sorry, you're muted still.
Well, definitely, I don't think online will create any community. It will maybe enhance the interaction. Well, definitely, I don't think online will create any community. It will maybe enhance the interaction between individuals with that is something we have really to design ourselves and give opportunities to is something we have really to design ourselves. There is that local community, for example, RIT Dubai community where there is that local community, for example, RIT Dubai done by saying, look, community where RIT Dubai students come together. I think this can be done by saying, and during the campus we give them a part of it, things which they will enjoy more in the sense they will come by themselves and they will maybe say, look, things which they will enjoy more in the sense they will come by themselves and they will maybe say, look, I don't want to take online because this is really good. When we go to the global arena, I think there has to be innovative. When we go to the global arena, I think there has to be innovative. Let me give you an example which we did during communities. During COVID-19, you know, the co-op program is very important. Students, they have to go to during COVID-19, you know, the co-op program is very important. Students, they have to go to. So we have an issue with students. We have to give them this opportunity. They are working online. Cannot really. So we have an issue with students. We have to give them this opportunity. So we created what we call two things actually. One of them is the boot camp. So we created what we call two things actually. One of them is to come and learn for a week how to become a consultant, some of them who are interested. To come and the guy who was really teaching those students is a faculty at RIT Dubai. And the guy who was really teaching those students is a faculty and he gave them the tools and the skills how to become a KPMG partner. Then we invited companies the tools and the region from Saudi Arabia, UAE, and then we invited companies from the region from Saudi Arabia, where our students they become consultants for you. Give us one of your projects. But we decided that the faculty decided, I'm not going to help only RIT Dubai students. But we decided that the faculty decided, I'm not going to have only RIT Dubai students and the main campus. I'm going to invite and even Tunisia. And we actually created the groups and they worked on these projects. And even Tunisia. It was really and we actually created the groups and they worked on these projects. And not only we managed really to prove the concept and these companies they will come again and not only we managed really to prove the concept that these companies they will come again and how beautiful that I am working with the student, they felt colleague or a peer from how beautiful that I am working with that created colleague or a peer online community, but somebody from China that they were given to do was an online community, but was creative task which they were pushing to meet again and again. Innovative, not just only creative, and even they were pushing to meet again and again. Not just only creating such opportunities for the students. I think if we become COVID-19 creating goes away opportunities for the students, I'm sure those students COVID-19 reflect these goes away these realities, and I'm sure those students they will reflect communities make these realities, and they create a new reality.
No, that's fantastic. I think that one of the points of that's I think extremely important. That's fantastic. I think that one of the students that work for I think global organizations in the future are obviously students going to have to have that skill set. Global organizations to collaborate and interact are obviously going to have cultures and across countries to collaborate and interact across digital cultures and across countries manner. So to often get do that experience in a digital or virtual and to create the community manner. At the same time to get that experience. That's a fantastic example. And to create the community. To me, that seems like something that's a fantastic every university would want to carry forward. To me, that seems like something COVID because every university would want to carry that collaborative talent COVID because you're working on a real world project, creating that collaborative talent may not. You're working on a real world project students could access normally as easy. That may not
that's phenomenal.
be something that students could access normally as
Would anybody
easy.
else like to comment?
That's phenomenal.
Ariel or Don?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Ariel. Would anybody else like to
Here
comment?
At Pacifico, what
Ariel or
we are
Don?
developing,
Yeah.
it started as a pilot, and now what we are developing, it started as a pilot, and now we have a group of public universities from the provinces of that we have a provinces of Peru, a long relationship of collaboration, that we have collaboration was, a long relationship of collaboration, but mostly the collaboration was, so what we did now that we have the opportunity because of the virtual. So what we did now that is that we are offering the possibility of students coming from those universities, is that we are offering the possibility of students like an exchange university, but to have local students coming like an exchange, but from local and the results have been really positive in a sense that the results have been really positive in a sense that in the class different professors at the moment to discuss students topics because they have a different view of professors because they have a completely because they have a different and also if you have in those classes they have international students and also if you have the environment also international students so we started as a pilot to have only 25 students this semester. So we started as a 70 students with only 25 students. This semester, for example, we have 70 students, naming in a way in this program, and we are going to continue doing. And hopefully, when we can open back, and we are going to continue doing. And hopefully, when we can open back for them to come and sit here, we will also offer the in-person experience for them to come and sit here and have the capital and stay. The in-person experience if they want to, if they're willing to come to the capital and stay for the whole semester.
Don, did you want to? Great. Thanks.
Yeah, I was going to comment talking about,
Don,
and I
think
it's a I was going to comment talking about, and I think it's something that fantastic talking about this because it's really sort of something it's all connected with student engagement. Because of this, because it's really of the students' it's all connected with student engagement. Yes, it's important because of the classroom environment, the students' that connectivity with yes, it's important about the classroom. We have seen now in that connectivity, and actually, quite honestly, we have some concern. We have seen now, we have, and actually, quite honestly, when we think about all of our freshmen, our first year students who've had a full year, when we think about all of our freshmen, in many cases, some of them have been online, not able to come back in many cases. Some of them really have been kind of a blended of having come back to campus. Some of we've really trying to have kind of a blended of having some in-person classes online and trying to have more students, but some of them due to health in-person classes for being able those the international, but some of them due to health reasons, and those even financial challenges, actually due to particular in our area, even financial challenges heavily dependent upon tourism, particularly in our area, really feeling the economic heavily dependent upon tourism, provide them families really feeling the economic impact. Study online, it's been great them an opportunity to have 100% study online, but they haven't had that connectivity with their peers from a course content and all our social events. They haven't had that connectivity with their peers, and our charity all our social events like our barbecue, or even being able to charity auction where they get together on a social basis, in Europe, or even being able to go for coffee together. All of those who have traveled here and realizing about going up out for a cup of coffee together, who have traveled here much more realizing about going up out for a cup of coffee together, connectivity, much more than just when you think about it, even when they're in class, here they're spaced out, and then when you think about it, even when they're in class, they're all on mask spaced out, and so the classroom environment 2 meters apart, they're all on mask about that interaction, and so the classroom environment, we're making sure they get out of the building without talking, and then go into the fresh air, sure they get out of the building without talking. Part that's a very important part of the fresh air, and all that kind of social. And ultimately, part that's a very important part of their why we're seeing more and with ultimately having, I think, mental health issues and just general well-being with having the importance about mental health issues as much as we can to create that sense the importance about us being as much as we can to one of our faculty area heads who heads of all our And one of our faculty area heads who had faculty meeting about, he was thinking initially that, in this environment, having, he was thinking initially team project, in this environment, it's going to be more difficult to be able to do that. And he was switched a lot of his it's going to be more difficult individual to do that. But now he's thinking differently and really shared that individual work. But now he's thinking differently and really shared that because it's not just of them working in the team of that teamwork, because it's not just of them working, but it's that connectivity. It's facilitating that the actual otherwise, but it's really it's cut off. It's facilitating that. And I have concern when I think about it's cut off basically. And we and I come concern when I think probably going to be looking basically at this model still. The world I don't think is going to change a whole lot. We're going to be looking at because this we're also still the world I don't think is going to change our vaccination rate, and also a little bit behind in terms of our vaccination exactly is going. Rate, and so we're probably going to be in this. So we're going to have students who have had exactly close to. So we're probably going to be in this. So we're going to have students who have had this close to not having that normal social connectivity. 2 years. So we've really got to look at ways from that engagement connectivity. I think that also we've really got to look at ways government that engagement more. I think that also we're trying to work with our student government. But I think at some point in time we also got to be balancing out this activities. But I think at some point in time we also got to be balancing out this environment where they can about being able to. And I think that is also going to be another one of our challenges while we're person still. And I think that is also going to be another one of our challenges. This whole safety still working through COVID is about this whole safety. How do we do it? We can create from completely 100% safe. How do we do it? We can create a completely, and that's been the 100%. But what's going to be the consequences of that when we look at a year, that's been the focus. But what's going to be the consequences of that when we look at a year, 2 years ties in with our faculty and staff? We're seeing that people ties in with our faculty. Some people, we're seeing that this whole environment has been fantastic for some people. Kind of like who being this whole environment has been fantastic on their own. They kind of haven't suffered. They pick and choose those. When like working on their own, but there's haven't suffered. They pick and choose. When they're going to interact, not having. But there's other ones who are really. So that's going to be another piece that I think even post-COVID, and we think about. So that's going to be another piece that I think even create post-COVID, and we think about what this model come up with. We're going to have to create that to keep this sense of community. Come up, we've got to be doing a lot of trial and error and trying this sense piloting things. Community, and I think we've got to be doing a lot of trial and error and trying things, piloting things. That was
thanks, Don. I'll follow up a little bit with last night in our first panel. I'll follow up a little bit with came to mind, and you just alluded to it was the idea of maybe panel. One of the things that came to mind, and you just alluded to it, was the idea of solutions with the students, more co-creation, and as you pointed to talking solutions with the students. I think you said the student council, and as you pointed to talking to student government. You said the student council. If you could do one thing, or if you had one thing, if you could do one thing, or that might help aid in sort of, if you had one thing to sort building of that health of community that might help aid. Is there anything that comes to mind that building that health of you see as a potential students? Is there anything that comes to mind that you see as a potential some of the challenges that go with being disconnected? As break up some of the challenges that go with for being disconnected, as you said, it not really having your traditional in-person for semester activities, not really having your traditional in-person engagement activities.
I think one of our things that we put in place even I think one of our things that we put in place even prior to, and we have a peer mentor, and to date it's been a one-term activity where upperclassmen. To date, it's been a one-term activity where it's a volunteer thing. Freshmen have an option, and it's a volunteer activity. Freshmen have an option, and it's a volunteer activity for those. And they serve as a peer mentor students. And they serve as and we have kind of requirements about how often they meet, interact with the students. We have kind of requirements and that's been a really good part from the socialization. And that's been a really good part, particularly from socialization. socialization, and and some outside of Zagreb, particularly from what is it like living here, those kind of tips and tricks, some from the academic, what is it like living here, a lot of it, those kind of tips and tricks, some from the academic American style, a lot of it is for many students about adopting American style educational institution to that. But we think that we've got to look at some enhancements right off that. We're looking at this being now that we've got to look at some enhancements right off that. We're looking at this being now also about what is it, the things that they're going to be talking about, and also about what is it, the things peer that they're going to be talking about, making sure that if they do see those peer mentors, making sure that if they do see some not completely engaging, suffering for adapting, that they're not completely made aware of the other supporting services that they're made aware of the other support. We don't have services and that are the silver bullet by any means, but we don't have hoping that we're gonna the silver bullet by any means, and I'm really hoping that we're coming to an end, and that's been another key thing. All kinds of reasons have this in person COVID coming to an end, and that being another key thing. But I also think have this in person, as I said before, for our online community. But I also think, how do we keep them for our online and involved, and how do we keep them engaged, and for those who are in person, a lot of the social things are going to be able to kick back in, and for those who are in person, a lot of social things are going to be able to kick back in online, which I think have a lot of their natural. What do we do there? And I think we're going to those online have to have a lot of what do we do there? And I think we're going to have to have a lot of co-creation.
Great, Don. That leads into another question for anybody on the panel. Great, Don. That leads into another question for anybody on the panel. Is thinking about that, how to engage learners actively. So the question is, since one of the key factors, how to engage learners actively requires high self-motivation. One of the key factors, the idea that of maybe this engagement requires high self-motivation. So many online classes or blended classes. Is there anything that you're hearing from the faculty? So many online classes from your own experiences. Is there anything that you're hearing from the faculty or from your own experiences engage or anything you're implementing in that online trying to help engage students
could I respond to this and
in
also
that online
maybe
environment?
Incorporate a little bit of what David is asking. Could I respond to this?
Sure,
and also
of course.
Maybe incorporate a little bit of what David is asking. First of all, it's great to see my friend Narita here.
Please.
Thank you for being part of. First of all, it's great to see my friend Narita here. Thank you for being part of. I think we have to recognize a couple of things. The first thing I'll say is that I think we have to recognize a couple of things. The first thing I'll say is that ideal way. What happened to deliver COVID education is not an ideal way to deliver. We did not do. Period. What is considered best practice. And I'm not just talking about we in terms of what is considered best practice. I've talked to people across the country, and I'm not just talking about we in terms of our IT. What we did is we figured out how to cope with the situation. To use technology that we figured out how to cope with the situation. It wasn't terribly intentionally designed. We did the best we could. It wasn't terribly intentionally designed, and we did the best. So I think that's the first thing. One of my great fears in all of this, quite honestly, is I think that's the faculty experience. One of my great fears in all of this, quite honestly, is has in some ways been not the best with that. I mean, a lot of faculty it has in some ways been who had never taught in a remote. A lot of faculty asynchronous environment who had never taught experience and remote at it saying, oh my God, if this is online environment and took this experience technology mediated saying, oh my God, if this is online instruction or if this is technology mediated we didn't really fundamentally do with it. A lot of us, not everybody. And we didn't really fundamentally, a lot of us, not everybody, some to really rethink amazing in a fundamental way how they deliver their incredible work, to really rethink. But a lot of us fundamental way just got through their classes, the experience. But a lot of us also, and I think we need to step back a little bit from COVID. And I think we need to step back a little doing bit this COVID in an intentional and really way have conversations about this question of engagement. Intentional, not just how do we deliver courses, but how do we create a university? Not just how do we deliver courses, but how do we create a university and face to face? Where these kinds of part of the larger virtual and face to face, and I just don't feel like part of the what happened in COVID is any I just don't feel like the optimal. What happened in COVID, in fact, it might be any way near what would be optimal. The second thing I'll say is that, in fact, it might be. I think we're dealing with very culturally. The second thing I'll say is that I think we're dealing with very culturally different perspectives on this. You started teaching distance courses. You've been part of back in 1999 or 2000, 2001 to Croatian students, and they hate it. 1999, they want to see a faculty member standing in the front of the classroom. They want to see your face. They want to see a faculty member standing in the front of the classroom. They want to see your face. They want to have coffee with you. They want probably about, they want to talk. I don't know. I'll make up a number here. It's truly off the top of my head. Maybe it's true for about 70% of the American student truly off the top of my head. But maybe it's the other 30% want flexibility and adaptability and those kinds of things. But it's the other 30% want flexibility and adaptability and those kinds of what we think of. There's great variation what we want across cultures. And so, David, on your question here, you know, I'm not sure about what is most. So, David, on your question here, you know, I'm not sure about what is most wealthy or least wealthy in terms of the experience and access. I don't think any of this should get us off the hook. For having an obligation to ensure that every student, regardless of their socioeconomic status, to ensure that every student, regardless of their socioeconomic status, has an opportunity for a meaningful international experience. That's just my belief about that, and I think it's where RIT is. That, you know, simply saying, well, my belief about the poor kids can stay home and you know, watch. You know, simply saying, well, you know, the poor kids can stay home and talk in class. Well, the rich kids get to go and travel professor from around the world and talk in class. Well, the rich kids get to go and travel around the world. Boy, I think if that's the outcome of all immersive cultural experiences. Boy, I think if that's the outcome of all of this, we've failed. That can't be the outcome of this. I just think we have to sustain that commitment to ensuring that all can't be the outcome. All of our students, we have to sustain that opportunity, ensuring that all people. All of our students have a fair and equitable. I think in some ways it'll help with affordability for some students. It really can. I think in some ways it'll help with affordability for some students. We can't walk away. It really can. But it can't be. We can't walk.
Of course, please.
Well, three things that came to my mind in this discussion.
Of course, please.
We don't want to create autism. Three things that came to my mind in this discussion because of the learning. We don't want to create autism. We don't want to create students. They become so good in working and learning by themselves. We don't want to. They will not be students. They become so good in working and learning by themselves. But if we design things to be totally online, or maybe too much of online, if we design things to be totally online, or have everything online, too much of online, and giving the student because at the end of the day, students have. We know at the end of the day they are going to work with real people, because at the end of the day students, we know at the end of the day, and the university usually prepares real people and with other teams. The second element, and the university usually while during COVID-19 we are working. The second element ourselves as faculty while during COVID-19 we are working among ourselves very important students. How do we really partners in during that engagement? I think because at the end of the day those industry partners, they know that those students are coming to you. At the end of the day, well, actually maybe half of their education was online. All students are coming maybe to you. If we give them actually maybe half of their education was online first to now, and maybe if we give them COVID-19, maybe they will tell us first what sort of things we can really add COVID-19 we do online. Maybe they will tell us what sort of things we can really add on to what we do online in order really the number for the future advisory board members in every department. The number we had many advisory boards engagement members in every department. How do we really have many industrial partners engagement in order to tell them they finish? How do we really the last point which came to my mind ready for actually faculty when they finish. Many of them they were in their comfort zone. They want to teach actually online, faculty they were pushed to do it. And many of them they were in their comfort zone. They really want to teach online. And suddenly they were pushed to discover. And some of them they found actually really no matter what you do, I can do something. Continue. They discover themselves. Some of them, however, faculty they should really change the way they teach things. However, for example, faculty they should really change the way they teach things rather than just give, for example, give a project and let the student from main campus to buy Croatia giving them material, and let the student from main campus to buy Croatia around their country, their settings and assignments. That will make it more exciting than just their country, their settings and all example. That will make it more exciting than just only reciting material.
No, thanks. That brings up a point I wanted to make as Jim was speaking. And no, thanks. That brings up one of the things I was very impressed with and fortunate. But as Jim mentioned, one of the things I was very going into in fortunate survival mode, as Jim mentioned, and then just trying to play catch up. Going into really hasn't allowed the full, and then just trying to play catch implementation, but really hasn't allowed the College of Business. One of the things that they did very early on, but was very in the Saunders College of Business faculty. One of the things that they did very early on that was very hybrid is they took in support of our campus in China had been teaching hybrid in support of our campus in China and other places, executive leadership to produce a weekly workshop and discussion around engaging to produce a weekly workshop. So I was quite impressed with engaging online learning. The amount of tools. So I was quite impressed with to Slack, the amount of Zoom, tools and add-ons to really make it much more interactive. To Slack, to Zoom, and I think it goes to really make it much more interactive. The university there, I think already goes along really doing a lot to enhance that. The university there was media. Really doing a lot to enhance their social media. That when COVID hit, they were a little bit more aligned with communications. Being that when COVID hit, they were a little bit more aligned with, as you mentioned, Joseph, just thinking about to be more digital. But I think we have to be flexible, as you mentioned, Joseph. Just thinking about with the employers, and we have to be flexible to realize that students. We have to be flexible with the employers. A new way of thinking about to realize that teaching this flexibility. This requires a new way of thinking about. I know there's another panel that will start very shortly. We're at the end. I want to thank all of our panelists today. Panel that will start fantastic very shortly. I believe thank all of our panelists today. Hear me, Lindsay's going to. I believe Lindsay, and maybe post quickly. Maybe Lindsay's going to evaluate everybody and maybe post up quickly a link. You wouldn't mind taking a minute. Evaluation. There we go. This just popped up. Qualtrics survey. You wouldn't mind taking a minute. Some feedback. Go to this simple Qualtrics survey. I appreciate those of you who got up early on a Saturday. But again, I appreciate Coast, and I want to thank all of you early on a Saturday panelists today, spending the East Coast, and I want to thank all of you with us. Our panelists wish everybody a great end of the spending your Saturday afternoons with us, and I wish everybody a great end of the semester. Thank you. Don, Mariala, Joseph, Jim, again, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Don, Mariala, Joseph, Jim, again, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks, Lindsay.
Everyone. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.